Welcome to Multifamily Grit, where we bring in the experts to share their stories of the celebrations and struggles of one of the most important industries in the U.S., multifamily property management. I'm joined today by Steve Boyack, Chief Operating Officer of JVM Realty and President of JVM Management, a leading multifamily owner-operator delivering best-in-class communities across the Midwest. With over 30 years of experience, Steve oversees everything from sales and marketing to innovation and tech integration, shaping JVM's high-performance property management platform. Steve is a respected thought leader in the industry, known for his expertise in PropTech and operational strategy. And before JVM, he served as COO and global head of property management at CA Ventures, where he helped launch their European operating platform, Novell Student, and led major initiatives in sustainability and wellness. Today, we will explore Steve's thoughts on how important it is to clean before you redecorate. That is, to get everything in order before you actually start innovating and changing anything. His analogy between the banking industry and multifamily management, and how important it is to think about your client, specifically the renter, in this whole redecorating process that we're all doing today. So before we get started, we're sponsored today by the only core property management operating system built with an emphasis for affordable owners and operators. Fortress revolutionizes affordable management with features focused on automating housing assistance charges and payments to keep ledgers clean and accurate, centralizing file reviews and document storage through Fortress and AWS, and a free in-system smart waitlist to ensure your property stays in compliance. And don't forget, if you like what you hear today, please like, subscribe, and share with someone you think would enjoy this episode. So Steve, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Kerri, thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, me as well. And before we dig into that conversation, I'd love for you to take a minute to share with our listeners how you got your start in the industry.
Oh, wow. I'll tell the short version of this. I got started in the industry actually when I was still in high school.
Oh, wow.
My brother and I were just trying to earn some extra money. We had a lot of hustle in us. And so we introduced ourselves to a local property management company who had some properties nearby. And they hired us to do summer work. It was their typical practice to hire a couple high school kids to do kind of all those round to it projects that you never get around to.
Yeah.
So one summer turned into two, turned into three, turned into a relationship that lasted probably on and off for about 13 or 14 years. Went off to college, came back, went back to work with them, grew in the industry with them a little bit. And then, from them to another company, next opportunity to the next. But as a result, had the benefit of having pretty much every job you can have in the industry.
Yeah.
I was maintenance person and turned departments. I was a leasing agent, assistant manager, all the way up. I think the only title I didn't hold in the field was regional manager, and then jumped over to the corporate side of things and did asset management, business development, new business growth, COO, president, CEO, had a global head, all the different crazy titles, but I've had a chance to dip my hand into a lot of different things. It's been a really generous industry to be a part of.
Yeah. Your story may be the most broad I've ever heard. I don't know that I've ever, if I've ever heard a story where someone has had all of the roles that you've had, or so many of the roles. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it was being in the right place at the right time. But, one of the things I tell a lot of the younger folks on my team who want advice is, be there to help other people's jobs be easier.
Yeah.
Be flexible.
Yeah.
And be curious. If you can maintain curiosity and flexibility, and you're with the right company and surrounding yourself by the right people, I think doors have a tendency to swing open.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you said being in the right place at the right time. I used to credit a lot of my career to that, but I don't know if that's true anymore. And I actually think I see it now more so through the team members that I've elevated that have come up through either my current organization or with Elmington Property Management. And I would say there's always opportunities happening all the time, but they really tend to show up for the right people, or the right people even make their own opportunities, to be honest with you. There are times where we've created roles for the right people, but I couldn't agree more with you that it's about having that curiosity, flexibility, leaving your ego at the door, just being there to contribute to the team and the company, and you'll see the benefit, the reward from that.
Yeah, I actually even recently had somebody in my office talking to me about credit. And it was like, man, your head is in the wrong place.
Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
you're looking for credit, you're going to miss a ton of opportunities because people don't look
Yeah.
for people who are looking for credit to help out. They look for people who are just genuinely trying to be part of the solution.
Yeah.
To the other comment about just being in the right place, a lot of it is keeping your ear to the ground.
Yeah.
And, it's not just opportunity happening to you. It's making sure that you're available to opportunities. I had an occasion years ago where I had the opportunity to move back across the country where I wanted to be, and the CEO of our company um, just randomly quit. And it was, I think, maybe even the Friday before the Monday I was supposed to leave, and I canceled my entire trip. I think my car was being picked up to be shipped across country. My wife and I, plane tickets, private school, deposit paid for the kid, the whole thing. And I said, the place you want to be when disruption in the company is happening is as close to where the
Yeah.
decisions are being made. And frankly, just to be of service,
Yeah.
uh, not to pick up scraps or to look for opportunities, but to be of service to the people who are leading. That kind of disruption is going to create a lot of opportunities to help out.
Yeah.
Um, and in that transition, I think I maybe moved up a level or two in a number of months. Again, not because I expected it, but because I was ready for it.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a great story for people to hear. And I agree. I think so many times these days we have look, and I'm not the person to speak on this because there's like a pot and a kettle analogy coming here, but like we all have egos, right? And we do. It's you can't. No one can really eliminate an ego, but if you can make it the backstage or the backseat passenger and not the front seat one, I just think you create so many opportunities. And so, like like you said, you already had everything planned and shipped and schools and everything picked out, but it wasn't about you in that moment. Like it didn't have to be about you. It needed to be about the company, something that you love. Just like, I joke all the time that Fortress is like my second child. I have two boys, but Fortress was born in between them. And so like Fortress is so important to me. So I would do really anything to make it successful, just like I would my children. So I think if you can, just like, you need to put certain a lot of things in the back seat from time to time. Just if you can put your ego back there, it just makes all the difference in the world.
I appreciate you bringing that up. There's a lot of power in that, I think. Again, I don't know why people don't want to talk about it. It is the obvious, so why not talk about it?
Yeah.
Acknowledge it and give yourself an opportunity to move past it.
Mm-hmm.
Or, like you said, let it ride in back and not in
Yeah.
front. I think that's a brilliant way of putting it.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think I meditate a lot, so I think about my ego a lot. So it's a major concept in meditation. So,
It's a great practice.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So something I'm really excited to talk to you about, actually, because I have to admit this is not my strong suit. I wouldn't say that process and workflow management are my strong suit. Now, because of that, I've surrounded myself with a couple of people who are extremely strong in that. One, my VP of product is insanely good at it. But you have a really unique thought process on this. And I hope it was okay that I created a little bit of an analogy to what we had talked about before, but saying that you should find a way to clean before you redecorate. And I think you phrased this really well when you started talking about how important process mapping is. So what is process mapping to you? And I hope you don't hate my analogy, but how does that how does that apply to what you do, what you focus on?
I think it's no, I appreciate the analogy, and I appreciate you also talking about yourself in that way, because the reality is I'm the same. I'm
Mm,
ideas. I'm not as
yeah,
much execution. I used
yeah,
to be
same.
both. And as I've transitioned in my career, I've had the opportunity to more and more acknowledge what I'm truly great at and where my time and talents are best spent. And then I surround myself with people who are great, like you do. And I think it's just, again, acknowledging both things. I'm not good at it and somebody else is and can be. And so,
Mm-hmm.
we've been in an industry that has always talked about garbage in, garbage out. We joke around here. My first couple of years at this company was rebuilding the foundation. Can't build a house on a weak foundation. It's the same thing when you're trying to, create any sort of change, whether it be in business practice or technology adoption or whatever. I think it's important first to take a step back and look at what you have in place, decide if there needs to be any, reorganizing, cleaning, preparation before you get into a build mode. And I think part of that process too is taking a look at the journey from the beginning to the end and breaking it into the pieces, and then determining, who and what are going to be affected along the way. I hear so many people talk about centralization with no acknowledgement of their portfolio, no acknowledgement of who their investors are, or if they have third-party managers, no acknowledgement of the team in the field. And my first question often is like, are you going to redo your job descriptions? Are you going to redo your policies and procedures around those things? How are you going to incentivize those people now in the future? Since you've taken away some things and you've given some other things, wouldn't that potentially change their incentive platform? So many people launch these things gung-ho, hair on fire, without a lot of thought process. And then you can't figure out why your teams are frustrated or your leasing agents are leaving because they didn't understand and they don't think there's anything in it for them anymore. And so I have a lot of respect for the process of going through all that thought, mapping it all out, getting all the right people in the room at the right times, not to drag the whole team down, because, everywhere I've ever been, it's, don't involve the process. It's just going to slow things down. I've had a couple of occasions to work on projects in the past where, the comment that I make at the end is, we would have gone twice as far for half the money and had 3 times the results if we had done this right from the beginning.
Yeah.
You under resource, you under plan, you execute, you fail, you triple down on expense and resource and whatever to fix it. And in the interim, you've ruined your reputation, you've, frustrated your employees. And I just think it is worth the extra effort to kind of go through a process to make sure you touch as many points as you can. And the reality is you're going to miss some. But I'd rather miss 1 or 2 and still have everybody in the room willing to work with me than miss a lot of them and everybody's gone.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned, like taking the space, the time and the space to do this processing. Do you feel like real estate companies, property management companies have the time and space to do this now?
I think it's one of these where you don't have the time not to do it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there is frankly so much coming at us, so much change, so many new products, so many new companies, that I think really taking a pause and even just asking the questions, what's the problem we're trying to solve?
Yeah.
If you have a North Star, if you have a mission or a vision or a plan for the year, how valuable is it to hold whatever the idea is up to that and say, does this get us any closer to where we said we wanted to be this year? Or again, back to is it a problem? Is it just a hammer looking for a nail? Or will it get you closer to where you want to be? Again, I sit on a lot of calls, I'm on a lot of committees, and I oftentimes look to the left or the right and see people just trying to be busy for busy's sake, or trying to try the new thing just because everybody else is trying it. And, I think a more disciplined approach is frankly the right way to go, or at least it is for us.
Yeah, I agree. One of my favorite, I think it's a real story. I don't know, maybe it's a fable. I don't know. But one of my favorite stories that I like to reiterate to my team, and we talk about a lot, is the story of the conversation that Warren Buffett had with his pilot. Do you know this one? So
I think so.
I don't know if it's true or not, but I've read it a few times, and know some people who've heard it. So apparently his pilot was like mentioning to him that he had like all these things that he was trying to accomplish in his life. And Warren Buffett was like, oh, that's amazing. Like, write down your top 30. And he said he wrote them down. And he was like, okay, now pick up, what are the top 3? And he circled the top 3. And he was like, okay, great. Like, those are your top 3. That's amazing. Now, what do you do with the remaining 27? And the pilot was like, well, I mean, I guess I work on those like in the middle when I have time, but I just like focus on the three. And Warren Buffett was like, absolutely not. Like you do not even think about those 27 until those
Yeah.
three are done. And it's like the power of no, like how it's so much more important what we say no to than it is what we say yes to. So anyway, I think I try to think like that. It's hard though, but I think it's so important.
It is hard, and there's a lot of competing interests. One of the things it's adjacent to this is probably not center of the bullseye, but one of the things that we also have made a practice of is, we have different department heads that get together regularly to talk about what's going on with them and to try and create synergies so that other people not only know what's going on, but where they need to intersect and contribute. And I think this is probably fairly universal across a lot of companies. When we get together, people start talking about projects. We started putting them on an actual calendar.
Oh, yeah.
We created columns, who's the sponsor, what's the problem you're trying to solve, all those typical questions. But the most impactful column on the on the chart was who's involved. And it is amazing. It has been consistently amazing every time we do it to show, number one, how many projects are happening at any given time. So we haven't done a very good job of working with each other to make sure they're scheduled appropriately. And fairly consistently, you'll see the same people. If there's 8 projects, the same people are on 6 of them. And you're like, okay, Kerri, how many things do you actually think you could be doing at one time and still be effective in doing, kind of what you're here to do, which is hopefully to get some returns back to our investors.
Yeah.
So, communication has gotten a lot clearer in our organization as a result of creating these visuals from time to time, because you can talk about those 8 projects, but there is no acknowledgement of when they overlap, the times they overlap, and the people who are involved in each one of them. So that'd be an unlock that I would recommend for people to try out.
Oh man, I absolutely love that and the visual of it. My team recently went through an exercise with a lot of projects that we were actually working that we're trying to accomplish in the next 12 months. And in order to prioritize them, that my VP of product that I mentioned before, who is just phenomenal with this stuff, forced us to go through a RICE evaluation. So for each project, we had to assign a reach. So like how many people would this project touch, the overall impact of that project, our confidence in the success of that project divided by the effort that would need to go into it. So yeah. And so then it gave every project a score. Yeah. Like a truly objective score. And then after that, we did put a little element of like gut into it where we were like, this one should be a little bit higher. But for the most part, we were ranking 50 plus projects. And for the most part, it came out and we were like, wow, this is amazing. Like putting that objective. And like you said the visual, like the impactful, the impact of actually seeing it, whether that's seeing who's involved or seeing that objective score related to it, can be so helpful. And I just think without that person on your team who's pushing process, so many companies don't do that. They just, kind of swivel their head around at the most exciting thing that's honest, that may even just be entering their inbox that day.
Yeah. I mean, I cannot reiterate how important it is for leadership to believe in that.
Yeah.
Because frankly, the team that works on that has always been in this office. I am a newer joiner, just being here 3 years, and I don't think that team has ever gotten as much attention as they have now, because they were always seen as an impediment to progress or timing. And we've had a couple opportunities to walk back some things that didn't go exactly the way we planned, and lo and behold, what was the missing piece? We didn't update the policy. Oh, we forgot to consider that. Well, that's in our process map tool.
Yep.
Had we gone through that, we wouldn't be in this room today talking about our failure. We'd be talking about our success. So,
yeah, I agree. It's funny because that our VP of product. Her name is Lihia, but I do not pronounce her name correctly, so I call her LC. But there are times where LC will speak up and be like, "Well, we need a process for that," and you can hear everybody roll their eyes, like it's like so intense. But we all benefit from it too. When we show up to that meeting and she's prepared all the artifacts that we need to make the decision or to create the presentation or whatever it is. That level of organization, I do think inherently we as humans tend to shy away from it. We just want to do, we just want to feel productive and move forward.
Well, it's that whole, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. But if the people going together with you don't know where the hell you're going, everybody's running in a different direction.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. So you brought up centralization, and so many groups are talking about this right now. And I just, especially groups that are thinking about it or doing anything around it, I just feel like everyone's wanting to know what's working and what's not. What are you guys doing with centralization today?
That's a word that doesn't get used a lot in our office unless you hear that kind of thunderous eye roll that you were just describing. Because again, it's just way too buzzy.
Yeah.
We're focused more on specialization than we are on centralization.
Love that.
It's within that process map. It's taking a look at, what the problem is, where we're at, where we're looking to get to, breaking it into all of its pieces. What are all the different steps in the process? Which one of them needs to be done by a human?
Mm-hmm.
Which one can be done by technology?
Yeah.
If it is a human, where does that person need to be sitting? Do they need to be on site? Can they be somewhere else? And I think, there's a bit of an implication in centralization of corporate, but, maybe that's me. I don't know. I don't think putting people in corporate offices is necessarily, the most successful thing to do. But it's, where can you add automation to things?
Mm-hmm.
Talking about AI right now, I'm sure that's going to come up. Like, where can we apply AI? To me, the whole idea is if we can build processes where automation, AI, and people all collaborate in a really dynamic way, that's, I think, what's going to be the unlock. I think building systems where human judgment comes together with AI and automation to work kind of seamlessly. So, back to centralization, though, one example for us is we really wanted to move the needle in one of the biggest areas of threat I think our industry, not just us, has is in the maintenance side of our business and being able to attract and retain talent in that area with a lot of that population kind of aging out and us not being able to attract more people in. How do we add value and give more meaning to the workday for a maintenance person, right? And so how can we work with them? And so we had a couple of individuals that had unique skill sets that, beyond generalization in the topic, and we turned them into experts. And in some instances, we made bigger investments in them to get them to more of the, doctoral PhD levels, whatever it was they were experts at. And then we turned them loose on the portfolio. We are largely Midwest focused, HVAC. We're about to get into that season. We do have an expert in that who can help get out and train, can help as, being a remote resource when they have questions, can even, get on a FaceTime call or whatever and help them troubleshoot things. When we have new employees coming on board, can get them trained up. We have the same thing in the world of appliances, all the light appliance repair. We have an expert in-house. We have a specialist who, his bar has been raised, but he's also raised the bar for everyone else. Would you call that centralized? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think he's adding value to every individual where they're sitting today, but also got a chance to walk a little bit taller and have a little bit more of an effect on the bottom line of the company. So we're looking for, a lot of opportunities like that where we can create kind of long-term enduring effects for our business, and frankly, for the industry as well. If we raise maintenance people up and they stay with us, great. Love that. They do have other opportunities where they move to other companies. That's great too. This is going to be an effort, I think, by everybody to get to the next level.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question at all or just went for a a stroll.
No, I think that was the perfect answer, actually. You and I agree on a lot of things. So this is going to be a very agreeable podcast. But I agree. I do not like the term centralization very much at all, actually, because I think it comes with a lot of assumptions about where that person sits or operates, or like I said, that corporate versus on-site. Whereas I think these roles are still very on-site focused. They're very site driven. And even if that is renewals or leasing or collections or whatever it is, it's very much a site based role. But it's just specializing. And to your point, giving someone one task to do that they can do, kind of that they can really focus on and shine and become really, really good at, whether that's, renewals, or as you mentioned, like HVAC or electrical experts, whatever that is. But if you can become an expert in your domain and you can start to, set like bars for yourself and push past them, or then become an expert in that, and you can train other people in it. Like there's something so valuable and rewarding about that versus the way that we treat our on-site teams today. It seems very schizophrenic. Like you're asking one person to be fantastic at sales and collections and facilities and people management and the legal implications of fair housing. And it feels so schizophrenic for them. It's like, how do they focus and feel successful?
Yeah, and you've only talked about our side of the equation. I mean, there are psychologists and sociologists, and the stories that come out of this industry over the years are just so amazing. The application of people's time, attention, and heart to the residents,
Yeah.
which frankly is really what moves the needle.
Yeah.
I think any of these changes that we're trying to put into place, like my goal is to get our clients, whether they're prospects or residents, to our employees faster.
Yeah.
And to then empower and train and give people all of the tools that they need to make sure that those experiences have the highest value outcomes for both parties. So I think of, everything to me, that's like one of the things I would write up on my wall and say, does this get the person to the person faster so that they can have that human interaction? And all the process and systems and technologies and AIs that get shoved in the middle of that, fantastic.
Yeah.
But it really is at the end of the day about getting people closer to each other faster.
That's so interesting, because a lot of solutions today, a lot of groups today would argue that it's more about eliminating people on site.
Boy, I think that is probably one of the, like, if you don't agree with what I'm about to say, this is where we can disagree. I think that's one of the most short-sighted things that you can possibly think of. I think that there is very little chance that the staffs at our sites are going to dramatically, well, let me say this, our staffs, I shouldn't say at our sites, that our staffs are going to decrease. I think where our heads need to be, and this is part of process mapping change, is that the roles and responsibilities of the individuals that are working for us are going to change. They just are. And, in the lead into this, you also talked about the banking industry and the analogy that you and I talked about. I don't know if this is the right place to insert it.
Yeah,
but
I think it is.
That's the one I like the best because, again, I was alive at the time where the industry was antiquated. And, we are described often as an antiquated industry, just like banking. We are wanting to change and poised to change, but banking did go through this.
Mm-hmm.
It's an old school business, very in person, lots of regulations, same with us, lots of barriers to change. But I think if you talk to bank managers or owners, they would tell you, high touch and high service, and that requires human interaction and people to be kind of nose to nose with each other. But what that led to was long lines, long waits, a lot of inconvenience. You had ATMs come out. Oh, what are people going to think? Service is going down, the human touch is going away. People love ATMs.
Yeah.
It turns out that for low value, small, basic transactions, people don't want to deal with people. They just want to get to where they want to get to, and they want to get there now. And then came on online banking and apps and the whole idea. I mean, my wife and I it's an overstatement, but we almost didn't get married over her having to balance her checkbook. I mean, that whole concept was like, whoa, is this what I'm getting myself into? But I mean, that's now people are like, what's a checkbook,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Um, so over time, they transitioned to a service model that put the client in control of the relationship. Everything became instant. You can even, I mean, I remember when you could first deposit checks, because I was
yeah.
like, oh, I can do everything, but I have to go
I
deposit
remember that
checks. I
too. Yeah.
can wire money. I can look at my balance at any given time, and it also shows me kind of what's in flight. So I think, are there less people working at banks? Probably slightly,
Mm-hmm.
but the reality is they have changed their focus to more specialized services, where when you
Yep.
walk into a bank, it is my experience, at least, that it's delightful. There's
Yeah.
almost never a line.
Yep.
There's always somebody dying to help you.
Yep.
They can. They're very specialized in what they do, and why you're walking through the doors because you likely do have a very specific need.
Yep.
And the banks, at least the ones that I'm familiar with, have all shifted their business models to higher margin businesses where their revenue per staff member is way up.
Mm-hmm.
So again, maybe slightly smaller to no change in staff. I'd say slightly smaller, but the dollar sign hanging over that employee's head and it is much, much bigger. And by the way, I believe my experience is that clients, myself, are much, much happier
Yeah.
with that relationship and the freedom and the control and my ability to do it kind of when I want, where I want, and how I want. And I think that's kind of the ring for us, right? Is to have something that's similar to that. So I think what they've gone through very influential to kind of where we want to be. And they did it by creating a self-service environment that's really technology enabled.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's why I say, like, I don't think the property teams are going to change in size. I think they're going to change and evolve in task.
Mm-hmm.
And that means new job descriptions, new hiring protocols, new incentive programs, just kind of all of it. And I think those people then, because they're going to be more specialized even on site, are going to be able to generate better outcomes and experiences for our residents and the prospects. I think the end result is going to be more satisfied customers who feel more in control.
Yep.
What's better than that?
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I loved the banking analogy that you provided because I also have been there, have gone through that experience with a bank, and I'm very fortunate. The bank that I work with, actually multiple, because of my businesses, the customer service I experience these days is phenomenal. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. I mean, they call me days ahead of something potentially happening, or call me to let me know about opportunities, and share with me opportunities about products that make them money that, before they would have never had the time to do that. So to your point about increasing margin, it's such a smart business model. And I love the analogy because that business also was, the analogy just works so well. It was antiquated business, high touch, like it just makes so much sense. And also I will share, funny, I had a hard time not laughing out loud when you said that about your wife and almost not getting married over a checkbook balancing situation. My husband and I almost didn't get married over a taxes situation. He worked overseas for quite a few years, and during that time didn't have the most reliable CPA working for him. It's still his fault though, but he likes to blame it on the CPA. But he hadn't filed his taxes in a few years, and I was like, if we don't take care of this, like, I'm not marrying you. This is not happening. So.
Come visit you in jail.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I was like, oh, so I feel you there. So, through all this, you have brought this up a few times, and I think this is something that so many of us, in multifamily are not looking at yet. We're still looking at utilizing technology and process and workflows through the lens of, how does this impact our financials? How does this impact our on-site team members? How does this impact the number of staff or where the staff is? But you've brought it up a few times, Instead, how are we looking at this like through the client's eyes? So I'd love for you to speak a little bit about that and how you and your team look at it.
I was thinking about a couple of weeks ago, I was asked to talk to some folks about the application of technologies towards renewal processes. So we sat down and kind of thought through that a little bit and all the different steps in it. And I'll tell you that almost every stop along that journey, I got a real sense of me. Like, this is for me,
Uh-huh.
right? And so to me, it's always like, who are the ones who are benefiting from anything that you're doing? There's usually three legs to the stool. It's usually, the corporate or the investor. It's either the investor, the operator or owner, or the resident, right? And so if you could be looking at things where everybody wins, that's fantastic. But I think the farther away from the actual client that you make your decisions or your investments, it's just like, it's not going to work out,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like, hey, when we're communicating with residents and the timeframes that we're asking them to reply to us, so number one, is that the way that they want to be communicated to? Is it email? Is it text? Is it, like whatever? The timeframes that we put on them, are they fair, or are they entirely for us? How do they get back to us? It's everything in there was just like me, 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 me. And
Mm-hmm.
and so as we look at different tools and technologies, I really like to sit on the side of the resident. And I have had occasion to do that recently. The end of last year, we had a flood in our home, and I got the opportunity to move into one of our properties and really experience it firsthand. I think it's kind of one of those like like I think you and I talked about, like, everybody should live overseas at some point in their life to
Yeah.
have that experience. I think everybody in this industry and probably on regular occasion should move into one of their properties just to see what it feels like. And again, I got a firsthand experience, and my question is always, am I getting the CEO or COO or president of the company experience, or am I getting a regular resident experience? And I have a tendency to look at it through both lenses. And I think, wow, if I'm getting this as the president of the company, what must the residents feel?
Oh,
And
wow.
if I am just a resident, what must the resident feel?
Yeah.
And so, try to design things that, again, make people feel comfortable, make them feel in control. If they feel safe, comfortable, and in control, they're
Mm-hmm.
likely to make, or at least be led in the direction of making the decisions that work out for both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I need you to carry now,
Yeah.
you get it back to me in the next 24 hours, or um, it's just not great.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to ask, you can feel free to decline this question, but I really want to ask, what's the thing that surprised you the most about moving in, about your experience when you moved into one of your properties?
Um, I'll answer kind of high level because I don't want to indict the company. The tool that was put in my hand to communicate to the owner of the property, the manager of the property, was wholly lacking. It just left
Oh.
me feeling, my example was, if I open I'm a United guy, I'm Chicago based. If I open my United app, the first thing it tells me is how special I am, and how I have status, and how I have points, and where do I want to go, and how can I serve you. Um, and then we get on to business. And, the first thing that this experience was telling me is that I owed them money. I didn't come here to be told that I owe you money. And by the way, I owed you $0. The first thing you want to do is remind me that I don't owe you anything. Thank you. It just didn't feel great. And so it
Yeah.
has led to some really interesting conversations and change over that. But I think one of the things for people who serve our industry, and I mean, you're one of them, right, is the minute that I attach myself to your product and then put it in front of the resident, that's me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think a lot more care on the side of the providers, and there's a lot of new companies coming up. So this is a real area where they can differentiate and acknowledge that they're not delivering necessarily products to me, they're delivering to my end unit, and they're an extension of my brand, and my brand has a tremendous amount of value.
Yeah.
And, we hold it very close to us. And so to get onto one of our sites and realize that we were representing ourselves in that way, it was like, ugh. And then the funny story is I just didn't know where the hell to plug in my router for my computer. I'm like, for the love of God, there's 5 plugs in this place. Which one's the plug,
Well, I appreciate you sharing that story because I think it's really interesting, and I cannot imagine how intimidated that team was to know that you were going to be living at that property for a period of time. Oh man.
I was very aware.
Yeah. I'm sure. I'm sure. Oh, that's such a great story. Speaking of the technology that you choose to use and deploy and how it's a representation of you, we talked a little bit about how you're more hesitant to roll out new technology because it's less about redecorating and more about cleaning up. And that as you clean things up, normally you can find the solution in the cleanup rather than actually bringing in a new product. So, but at the same time, new technology has been bringing a lot of value to
Mhm.
a lot of groups, yours included, and that some of that has to do with just the data that you're receiving and how you look at it. And I know that you guys have, especially when you're talking about the customer and the client, that you're looking at that data in an interesting way.
Well, I think 2 things are embedded in that. And if I get off track,
Yeah.
please bring me back. One of the things that my background has taught me is that you need to be thinking in 2 time frames at all times. You need to be addressing what's immediately in front of you, but you also need to be thinking, whatever the number is, 5 years down the line about where you want to be and how you want to get there. And, ignoring the problem or the challenge that's in front of you will only make it worse. So you got to be dealing with that. And so you have I think good scenarios where the decisions that you're making today are ones that you're going to continue to build on out to that 5-year timeline. And then there's others where it's like, we just got to get something in place to solve this today or to help us move forward today, knowing full well that at the rate that things are changing, you might be making some additional changes in the future.
Yeah.
And might is likely will.
Yeah.
Um, but so your question was on data. I have this opinion that we're at this kind of pivotal moment where our providers, call it our PMSs, have always been in control of our data and the access to it, and when it's accessed, how it's accessed, what's available, what's not available. And I think with the direction that technology is going today, there's a real opportunity to unlock. And it's going to be interesting because some of the larger companies who have both the time, the money, and the staff to do this will likely get there faster. I think for some of the providers who can figure out a way to package that and deliver it for the rest of the market is a massive opportunity. But I think when we start to have more control of our data, call it, data lakes, unstructured data, whatever, and start to invite providers into relationship with us and our data, we can get to where we're going, I think, a lot faster. And also kind of define the outcomes that we're looking for. We can potentially move from dashboards or single panes of glass or reports or trends or all of that to being in a position where we're more, hopefully conversational with our data, where we can just query the data and it just spits out the answer that we want, or an actionable insight or something to us, instead of having to run a report, review the report, digest the report. I mean, the joke that I've been making fairly consistently is if you put a dashboard up and I have 10 people staring at that dashboard with me, there's at least 6 of them that are really loving the blue. Like, that blue line, it's really pretty. Who picked that blue? That's gorgeous. 2 of them are going, I think there's a trend. It looks positive. I think that one's negative. And then 2 are going, wow, I know what to do with this. Like, we got to do something. Like, this is either good or bad. And so, I think when we get to the point where the data is speaking back to us and telling us where we need to go, kind of where to skate to, to meet the puck, I think that's going to be a real move forward for us. And there's a lot of folks that I've been talking to who are moving there quickly. But as I often say, most people in senior leadership in property management's job is just not to get fired.
Yeah.
And so to be the decision maker around some newfangled technology, I was even on the phone with someone right before this call talking about AI and data lakes and everything. They're like, how are we going to keep everybody out? Okay.
Yep.
Kind of asking the right question, but not really.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. I really like that point of the data telling you what to create, bringing the insight to you, the action item to you. I think that we, especially in the core PMS world, at least we think about it a lot, right? Where it's like, we have the ability, we have the data to analyze against a resident to be able to say whether or not what that resident's like satisfaction score is, like with with your community, right? I mean, we can tell that by the tone of the messaging that they have with you, the consistency of communication that they have with you, like how they fill out the work order. When you create a work order, you have an open text box where you can describe the issue, and there's a big difference between someone who says please and thank you and someone who drops an F-bomb. So like you have the ability to like understand kind of that resident satisfaction score within the system. And then, if that resident is coming up for renewal, and in some cases, if you want the resident or not, right? Like, and we know how many NSFs they've had, or how many late fees they've had, or how many times your site has had to reach out to them or issue them 7-day notices, those sorts of things. And so you can actually say like, the recommendation is that you do or don't reach out to this person about their renewal, or you do or don't offer a renewal for this unit. And when you do that, and so I do think that there's such a great opportunity for the data to present those action items to, I mean, and that's a very granular level, but just across the board, the data being able to help you solve the problem.
What's interesting about the resident journey and the story you just told is, what I have a lot of curiosity around is the fact that we have, I didn't make this up, 5 different systems that are being used during that residence, both, journey into the property, during the time out of the property. And each one of them now has an AI layer to it, and each one is telling me something. So I have 5 different people talking to me, virtual people talking to me about Kerri.
Yeah.
And the maintenance app says that Kerri is super happy, and the PMS is telling me she's grumpy and she dropped some F-bombs, and the other one's telling me she didn't show up for any of the events. And, and the reality is like there is no consistency. There's no kind of journey line through that. And so that's, to me, I'm like really excited when, and there are some of these in the works for sure, but when there's like the AI that rules them all, that can bring all that data into one place and give you a true sentiment analysis of that person. And then when it's like Tuesday at 4:00 is the right time to approach Kerri, you're going to want to send her a text message, and you're going to want to say this to her.
Yep.
And that is going to give you the highest potential for converting her to a renewal. One of the data points that on first blush, kind of didn't make sense to me, but the more time you sit with it, is like a real duh moment is, in our portfolio, the folks that have the most work orders performed in their apartments, again, happiest, unhappiest, most likely, least likely. The reality is the folks that we're seeing that have the most work orders are the most likely to renew their leases.
So
because the maintenance staffs are exceptional. They're trained to be exceptional. They break, records all the time in their speed to getting things resolved. And they're also allowed to and trained to be relational to the residents. They can spend a couple extra minutes and ask about the kids or the dog or the whatever. Go the extra mile and not say, can you put in another work order for that? But like, is there anything else I can help you with? And then when they do respond and give us ratings on that, they have a tendency to be really, really high. If we had no contact with that resident through their entire term of their lease, they could be perfectly fine, but we haven't had a chance to wow them. a chance to dazzle them in any way or to build relationship with them. And then it's kind of like, what's it up to, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So this is, again, back to my point of using all of these tools, technologies, training to unlock opportunities to get the people to the people.
Yeah.
And if something breaks, that's fine. It's not that it breaks. I don't think anybody is unreasonable about things breaking. It's kind of how you deal with it breaking. So if we're in your apartment in a couple hours and in and out, clean, polite, well serviced, please and thank you, that's a great experience.
Yeah.
And if they come to like one pool party and no one talks to them, it's like, so again, to me, it's that opportunity to get people with people. That's what we're focused on.
Yeah. I feel so guilty asking you this question now because you have given me so many stories, but I feel like all those stories were in response to specific and targeted questions. So I'm gonna ask you the question, but please know with humility, I'm so grateful for all the stories you've already shared. But I'd love to ask, do you have a story from your time in multifamily that you'd like to share with us?
Ugh, this is tough because this is usually, kind of one-upping each other around a campfire or something. You tell one and then I'll tell a better one. But since I was just talking about maintenance teams, I could tell you a story that I think I've told once or twice recently, but it does revolve around really training people up and allowing them, the opportunity to give really great customer service, but also helping them understand their power, their capability in the whole process. So we had a couple of properties in our portfolio where the renewal trends were not where we wanted them to be. So I had to sit down with our head of operations and said, we got to get in front of this. We got to see if there's any chance to turn these notices around, and for any of the unresolved renewals, let's see what we could really do to make a difference and get those people to renew. She, I think, brilliantly engaged the maintenance team.
Yeah.
Not everybody's first place that they would go, but they had a call, not just with the properties that had the challenge that we wanted to overcome, but with the entire team. She's a very, very sweet person and is a great motivator of people. And sat them down and said, hey, you guys are the difference. What I want you to do, and this was the supervisors, is to reach out personally, knock on the door, send an email, make a call, whatever you're most comfortable with. You do know the majority of these people.
Yeah.
And have a conversation with them and see if you can change their mind, if you can extract a piece of information from them that will help us either change their mind or frankly just do a better job so that we can get that renewal the next time. And I'm sure the majority of them were like, ugh,
Yeah, that's a unique request to maintenance.
Yeah, so they did. There were door knocks. There were, kind of stops on the way to the car in the morning, just saying, hey, Kerri, how you doing? Really sorry. I heard you put in your notice. We're sorry to see you go. If you wouldn't mind me asking, is there something we could have done to change your mind?
Yeah.
And some of them were, hey, I got the job or I'm getting married or whatever. But, the reality is they got answers to those questions that nobody else on the staff would have ever got because they had relationships.
Yeah.
And it was, hey, the increase was a little too much, or, this thing that's been bothering me that frankly I haven't told any about, I'm now telling you about. So across the portfolio, they were able to convert 8 of those notices into renewals. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
8 times an average rent times 12 months out of the year. So the power of the maintenance team cannot be undersold. I was not long after in a maintenance appreciation event where we actually invited in the technicians, not their bosses, just the technicians, brought them all in, a little bit of training, a little bit of rah-rah, had some fun. But there were, during the conversational period, I was just sitting in the back of the room soaking it in because as a reformed maintenance technician myself, that's a room I'm really comfortable in.
Yeah.
And, the topics that were being discussed, I think by the third time a maintenance person said, I'm just a maintenance guy. how could I affect change? I raised my hand and would you mind? And I walked to the front of the room and I said, I want to tell you a story about all your bosses and what they just did. And, kind of like this, tell me a story. I was like, I would challenge, each and every one of you to tell me a story about a resident that you have a relationship with, their kids, their
Yeah.
dogs, their
Yeah.
problems, you've been in their homes,
Um,
you know, if you were asked to engage those people, would you be able to do that? And, so anyway, I was like, you guys have a tremendous amount of power and, the whole math equation with cap rates and all that, these guys move the needle by X millions of dollars, was told as well, just so they understand the magnitude of this. But there's some of the most powerful people in our organization, with regards to us being able to create the environments and generate the kind of the mood and the feeling of a property. So really acknowledging them and celebrating them and empowering them to provide the levels of service that are going to change people's behaviors is, it's worth a great deal of time.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story. I think that's phenomenal. Even as a lot of people in the industry continue to talk about eliminating staff on site, we all still agree that there's no way to eliminate facilities management. So your maintenance supervisors, your maintenance technicians, like you will have people, someone servicing maintenance on the site full time. Like even if you were to outsource a lot of it contract, it is a very unlikely world where there isn't at least one person there full time. And so I think that should ring so many bells for all of us, the importance of that position. And it's just an incredible story. And hearing someone say they're just a maintenance technician is not absolutely not what you want to hear. And I love that
It made me sad.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Such a good story. So thank you for that. And then before we sign off, one more question for you, because you and I talked about this. I know you're an avid reader. Do you have a book that you would recommend to our audience, to our listeners?
I have a bunch. The one that a number of us read kind of accidentally, I guess, and then started talking about it. So we turned it into a corporate book club book for the next couple of months, was Unreasonable Hospitality, which I know you've read. And
Yeah.
probably other people you've talked to have mentioned as well. It's by Will, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, if it's Garda or Giarda.
I don't know either.
But I'm a big fan of hospitality, of food, of wine, and he's an alumni of Danny Meyer, and his book Setting the Table is referenced in there, and so I just think there's a tremendous amount of crossover between what he's talking about in that book and what we do on a daily basis, and it's kind of a lot about what we just talked about, importance of culture and giving people more than they expect. And I have a lot of preciseness around the words, service and of service. Like, I think providing people service is one thing. It's kind of what's expected. It's what they've asked for, but being of service to people is looking beyond that and trying to anticipate their needs and getting there before they even know what they want or need.
Yeah.
And, so our organization is very focused on being, or at least that's what I put out to the organization, is to be of service to people.
Mm-hmm.
If I can mention one more, just because I think it's
Yes, please.
It's interesting, is there's a book called The Magic of Thinking Big.
Yeah.
David Schwartz, I don't know if you read it.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Like 1960s.
Yeah.
Why I bring it up is it is before all the, psychobabble, mumbo jumbo, very topical type everything. It's, we're not negotiating, we're not doing this, it's just practical, kind of like, it's like your grandfather giving you advice type book.
Yeah.
I think it's worth a read.
Yeah, great book. I will say on the Danny Meyer and recognition from Unreasonable Hospitality, I actually took my husband to a one of the Danny Meyer's restaurants. I took him there for a trip for his 40th birthday to New York, and we went to Union Square Cafe, I believe. And when I made the reservation, I actually put in the reservation that it was bringing my husband there for his 40th birthday. And when we got there, they gave us menus that had "Happy 40th Birthday, Chris" printed at the top of them, for all of us, which was absolutely amazing. And one of my favorite stories out of Unreasonable Hospitality is a time that a family was eating at Will's restaurant, and they mentioned that one of the things that they hated that they'd missed in New York is they hadn't had a street hot dog yet. And so one of the waiters ran out and got a street hot dog and like put it on a plat of one of their,
Yeah.
plates that is probably worth 100 times what that street street hot dog cost, and put it on there and sliced it up and served it at their table. Which is just, it's such a phenomenal book about just completely rethinking like how we think about hospitality and customer service. And I absolutely love it.
Yeah. I mean, the last one I'd mentioned is this whole concept of, it's the way we've always done it. And I just think there's no area of your business that shouldn't be up for a
Yeah.
look.
Yep.
It doesn't mean you should be turning over the tables every day and, looking for all these different areas. But as you add staff or as you have ideas, don't say no. At least give it a minute to take a look and see if there is a better way that's going to meet the client closer to where they want to be. I mean, it's going to be an easy time to continue to surprise and delight people with all the new stuff that's coming on board, assuming that we all deploy it, correctly and kind of put it to work.
Yeah.
This whole idea of freeing the teams up on sites to focus more on high value relational type things. That's what I'm excited about.
Yeah. You said something earlier, so I'm going to quote you back because I want to end on this because I absolutely loved what you said and how you said it. But the focus right now is unlocking opportunities to get the people to the people, which I think is brilliant. And so, Steve, thank you for being here. I feel like this was just a wonderful conversation, and you have shared so many of your insights in the industry and stories, fun stories with us. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for the invitation and for being so easy to talk to.
Yeah.
This was great.
Same.